You should have seen that drone dive low and fast, buzzing inches above my daughter's head, like a wasp on a warpath, barking HOA warnings through a tinny speaker as she screamed and ran for the porch. Across the street, Marjorie Bellamy stood smug with her controller as if terrorizing an 11-year-old was just another day's work. That's when I knew this wasn't just about rules anymore. It was war. You should have seen Marjorie Bellamy's face when she realized we weren't just another quiet little military family looking to blend into Rosefield Lane. Her perfectly shellacked red bulb quivered like it was trying to escape her skull, and her oversized sunglasses slid down her nose just enough to reveal the fury behind them. All because my 11-year-old daughter Tessa dared to dance in our front yard. I'm Grant Dalton, 44 retired Army Black Hawk pilot. I've landed under fire in Kandahar, flown into hurricanes for medevacs, and held steady on aircraft carriers in 10-foot swells. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the control freak circus that is Rosefield Lane. When Lena and I bought this house, we thought we'd finally found peace. After 2 decades of overseas deployments and rotating bases, we were ready for fresh-cut grass porch swings and a safe place where our daughter could grow up sketching chalk suns on the sidewalk and spinning barefoot through the sprinklers. Rosefield Lane had it all clean, streets, picket fences, birds chirping like they were on payroll. But we didn't factor in the HOA, or more specifically, the Iron Rose herself, Marjorie Bellamy. She's 52 lives, 4 houses down in a beige McMansion with matching potted begonias, and runs the Homeowners Association like she's commanding a battalion. Only her battlefield is your lawn. Her weapon a clipboard so thick it might as well be body armor. Her uniform white slacks, orthopedic sandals, and a permanent scowl framed by that bright red helmet of hair. First week we moved in, she swung by with a laminated copy of the HOA handbook and a forced smile so tight it looked medically dangerous. "Just a friendly welcome," she said, pointing out the exact shade of mulch allowed in our flower beds and warning us about garden gnome placement protocol. I thought she was joking. Lena, ever the composed CPA, nodded politely, but I could see the flicker in her eyes, the same look she gets before tearing someone apart during tax season. At first we ignored the pettiness, the letter about our trash bin being at the wrong visual angle from the street, the comment about our hibiscus plants clashing with neighborhood flora themes. Whatever, we'd survived worse. But then she came after Tessa. My daughter isn't your average kid. She doesn't just walk, she twirls, she leaps, she makes sidewalk art that looks like it belongs in a gallery. Her joy is kinetic, pure, and apparently offensive to Marjorie Bellamy. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and saw Tessa sitting on the front porch, shoulders slumped, her sidewalk masterpiece only half finished. "What's wrong, kiddo?" I asked. "That red-haired lady said I couldn't draw anymore," she mumbled, wiping her eyes. "She said chalk makes the neighborhood look messy." I felt a heat rise in my chest. Lena came out, tea in hand, and said she told Tessa to stop dancing yesterday too. Said it was a disturbance. I blinked. She's 11. What's she disturbing? Gravity. Lena didn't laugh. She threatened to fine us. I started saving everything after that. Every email, every yellow HOA notice pinned to our door. Lena made a folder on our shared drive labeled Iron Rose Files. We thought we'd seen the worst until the buzzing started. It was subtle at first, just a faint whine in the afternoon air. But it got louder, closer. One Saturday I was changing the oil in the garage when I saw a sleek black drone hovering above our driveway, like a mechanical vulture. Its red eye blinked, staring straight down. I stepped out, hands covered in grease, and gave it a good long look. It didn't move. The next morning we got an email from Marjorie. Our porch light was too warm in tone and violated HOA Section 9.4. The email included a screenshot taken from the drone's angle. She was using it to spy on us. Tessa started flinching every time she heard a buzz. She couldn't go outside without checking the sky. Her dance stopped. Her chalk box stayed closed. My wife, God bless her, tried to keep calm. "Let's file a formal complaint," she said. "Let's follow protocol." But protocol doesn't work when your enemy writes the rules. Then came the day Marjorie's drone crossed the line from creepy to criminal. It was just past 4 o'clock. I was fixing a garden hose in the backyard. Tessa was out front in her favorite sundress earbuds and spinning circles barefoot in the grass. It was the first time I'd seen her dance in weeks. Then the sound came closer than before. The drone dropped lower, barely 5 feet above her. It dipped and darted like a predator. Then a robotic voice crackled from the tiny speaker. Cease unauthorized yard activity. This is a compliance warning. Tessa screamed and bolted toward the porch. The drone followed. It clipped one of Lena's hibiscus plants on the way, snapping a stalk and scattering petals like confetti at a funeral. I dropped the hose, ran for the front, and caught Tessa in my arms as she burst through the door sobbing. It chased me, she cried. It was yelling at me. My hands were shaking, not from fear but fury. I looked out the window and saw Marjorie standing on her lawn drone controller in hand, watching. Smug. That was it. You don't get to terrify my daughter and call it neighborhood enforcement. That night, Lena and I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by screenshots, footage, and HOA notices. She's using surveillance on a child, Lena said. That's a federal violation. And I've got the evidence, I said. We're not letting this go. I grabbed my phone and texted an old buddy from the base. He was still flying, still connected. Need 2 birds for a legal low fly, I typed. Got FAA clearance, he replied. Working on it, I texted back. It's time we give the Iron Rose a wake-up call she'll never forget. We were no longer just playing defense. The Daltons were going on offense. And Marjorie Bellamy was about to find out that the airspace above Rosefield Lane isn't hers to command. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tessa's face flushed with fear. Her little fists clenched around the hem of her dress, the sound of her voice cracking through tears as she said, "It chased me, Dad." And I saw Marjorie Bellamy standing there on her lawn, red bob glowing like a warning flare, clutching that remote like it was a royal scepter. That image burned in my brain. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. Lena knew it too. She was already pulling up FAA regulations before I even got out of the shower the next morning. Unregistered drone operating in residential airspace surveillance without consent, child endangerment. She muttered, scrolling furiously, her fingers tapping like machine gun fire across her keyboard. I poured coffee and opened my laptop. I've got videos, still images, footage of the drone chasing Tessa and crashing into your hibiscus. Time-stamped high-res full audio. Lena didn't even look up. We're going to bury her in paper. But I had something else in mind, something more immediate. I texted an old friend from my Army days, Captain Ray Biscuit Malloy, now stationed at a base just 30 miles north of us. We'd flown dozens of missions together, trusted each other in ways only combat can forge. I didn't need to explain much. Just typed, need a favor. Low and loud, 2 birds, legal run, visual only. You in the reply came within minutes. You bet your 6 I am. Just say when. We synced calendars and confirmed the airspace was clear for a routine training flyover. Everything was by the book, but the timing, oh, that would be surgical. Meanwhile, Lena and I got to work. I spliced together the drone footage into a clean, damning 90-second video. Tessa dancing in the yard, the drone appearing, descending the speaker, barking its robotic threats. Tessa fleeing the hibiscus, exploding into petals, and Marjorie across the street watching it all like it was a soap opera. I sent it to the FAA through their official complaint portal, attached a full log of past HOA fines emails from Marjorie, and a detailed breakdown of every regulation she violated. I also CC'd the Charlotte PD's non-emergency line labeling the incident unregistered surveillance of a minor. Lena uploaded every HOA letter to a shared folder labeled Bellamy HOA Hell, color-coded and hyperlinked. She even added scanned copies of chalk art fines and flowerbed warnings. We're not just building a case, she said, sipping her coffee. We're building a war chest. But if we were going to take down Marjorie Bellamy, we needed backup. So we started knocking on doors. The first to open was Mr. and Mrs. Jones, who had been fined last spring for planting lavender without HOA approval. She said it disrupted the neighborhood scent balance, Mr. Jones told us, still incredulous. How do you measure scent balance? You don't, Lena said, handing them a printed copy of our drone footage. But you do vote on leadership. Then came the Nguyens. They'd been fined $200 for using red ribbons in their holiday wreaths instead of the authorized silver. She called it a seasonal decor violation, Mrs. Nguyen said, rolling her eyes. I call it fascism with a floral twist, I muttered. By the end of the weekend, we had a full living room. Neighbors arrived in quiet waves, slipping in with covered dishes and bottled water like they were attending a church potluck. Lena had printed flyers that read HOA emergency meeting reclaiming Rosefield. Tessa passed out cookies she'd helped to bake, her eyes still wary but hopeful. I stood up in front of our flat-screen TV remote in hand and said, "This isn't just about my daughter being chased by a drone. It's about all of us. Every one of us has been fined, threatened, or shamed by Marjorie Bellamy. We let it go for too long because we didn't think we had power. But we do." I hit play. The footage rolled. Gasps filled the room. Mrs. Jenkins dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Tom, our next-door neighbor, muttered, "She's gone too far." When it ended, Lena handed out the petition, simple, legal, and backed by HOA bylaws. 15 signatures is all we need to trigger a leadership vote, she said. We already have 8. Pens moved quickly, angrily. By the end of the night, we had 20. Enough. More than enough. Now all we needed was to make a statement, and that's where the birds came in. The next morning, I got the confirmation text from Ray Wills up at 1600. ETA over your lawn 1607. Get your camera ready. It was a cloudless afternoon, the kind that makes a Carolina sky look like a watercolor painting. Tessa was inside watching cartoons, unaware. Lena stood on the porch with me, phone in hand, lips pressed into a tight line. "You sure this won't freak the neighbors out?" she asked. "Only the one that needs freaking," I said. And then it began. A low rumble. The sound of rotors slicing through air like a warning from the heavens. The ground trembled slightly. Windows rattled. Car alarms chirped. And then there they were. 2 Black Hawks sweeping over Rosefield Lane in perfect formation, just above the legal altitude minimum, their shadows stretching like twin thunderclouds across every beige rooftop. They weren't here for long, just one sweeping pass, but it was enough. The rotor wash sent leaves flying. It knocked over trash bins. It blew Marjorie's HOA flag clean off its pole. And best of all, it sent her drone tumbling from the sky, its little plastic frame spiraling end over end, until it crashed into her own pristine rose garden, snapping stems and scattering petals like red confetti. I caught it all on video. Every second. Marjorie stood on her lawn, clutching the remote like a broken wand, her face a shade of purple I didn't know humans could turn. She tried yelling something, but the roar of the helicopters drowned her out. Then just like that, the choppers disappeared over the horizon, their rumble fading into the Carolina pines. A moment of silence followed, and then a slow, deliberate clap. Tom, our neighbor, stood in his driveway, hands raised. "Now that's how you handle a HOA tyrant," he said. Phones came out. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted, "Did anyone get the drone crash on video?" I raised my phone. Got the whole thing. Marjorie turned and stormed into her house, slamming the door behind her so hard it rattled the shutters. That night, the footage went viral on the neighborhood Facebook page. Comments poured in. "Is that legal? That's the most American thing I've ever seen. I want to buy you a beer." I uploaded the clip to the FAA contact folder as follow-up evidence. I knew the real storm was coming: fines, investigations, perhaps even legal action. But more than that, I knew we had momentum. This wasn't just about flowers or drones anymore. This was about freedom, about standing up when the people who claim to represent you forget who they work for. Lena leaned against the porch railing that evening, watching the last light fade over the tulip trees. Tessa was back outside giggling as she chalked stars and sunflowers across the driveway. No drone, no clipboard, just a kid being a kid. "We poked the hornet's nest," Lena said. "Good," I replied. It was past time. 2 days after the Black Hawks shook the sky over Rosefield Lane, and Marjorie Bellamy's drone crumpled into her rose garden, like a wounded vulture, the real storm began. The kind with badges, citations, and consequences. The rotor wash had barely settled before Lena got the call. It was Dave Linscott, an FAA investigator, with a voice like sandpaper and zero tolerance for civilian drone abuse. "You weren't kidding," he said. "That footage your husband submitted crystal clear. No registration, no authorization, and that thing was flying well below the legal limit. Plus she broadcasted audio threats to a child. That's a whole separate category of stupid." Lena, calm as ever, replied, "We have more if you need it. HOA emails, neighbor testimonials, the full list of her fines and citations." Dave chuckled. "She's cooked." I've got a file the size of a phone book already. That same morning, a black and white cruiser rolled up to Marjorie's pristine driveway. Two officers stepped out, one holding a citation pad, the other carrying a printout of our video stills. I watched it all from our porch, mug in hand, Tessa beside me drawing a sun in chalk across the steps. The cops knocked. Marjorie opened the door in a bathrobe, and Garden Glove's red hair uncoiled like a busted spring. There was shouting, pointing, a slammed door, then another knock and a quieter conversation. By the time they left, she was holding a yellow citation in one hand and a half-broken pair of sunglasses in the other. Her empire was cracking. But HOA power doesn't just vanish, it has to be taken. That was our next step. We'd already gathered the signatures. The petition was airtight and the bylaws were on our side. Any HOA president could be removed by a community vote with majority support and documented cause. We had both. Lena spent the next 2 days printing flyers that read HOA Emergency Assembly. Vote for new leadership. Let's reclaim our neighborhood. We slid them into mailboxes under cover of dusk like freedom-fighting paperboys. The mood on the street shifted. Lawn chairs started appearing on front porches again. Kids chalked peace signs and daisies on driveways. Even the Nguyens hung silver and red wreaths on their mailbox, daring Marjorie to say something. She didn't. The meeting was set for Thursday night at the Rosefield Community Center, a beige, boxy building that smelled like stale coffee and Lysol. We arrived early. I wore my army dress shirt not to intimidate, but to remind everyone that this wasn't about revenge. It was about honor. Lena brought the binder a thick blue folder with tabs labeled Drone Footage, HOA Abuse FAA Complaint, and Community Signatures. Tessa in her sunflower dress clutched a small poster. She'd made a cartoon of Marjorie's drone tangled in a bush above the words, "Let us dance again." The room filled slowly but surely. First the Joneses, then the Nguyens, then the Harris family, the Jenkins, the Berries. Even old Mr. Connors, who hadn't left his house since his wife passed last spring, wheeled himself in with a handwritten note in his lap. Marjorie arrived last, clipboard in hand, like a shield, lips pursed so tightly they looked stapled shut. She took the front seat flanked by two HOA loyalists, the kind of people who counted inches between mailboxes for fun. The meeting opened with routine business. Budget reports, a quick update on landscaping. Then Lena stood up. We'd like to raise a motion to remove Marjorie Bellamy from her role as HOA president, effective immediately due to abuse of power, unauthorized surveillance, and repeated harassment of residents, including children. You could have heard a pin drop. Then Tom stood up. Seconded. I stepped forward, hit play on our projector, and let the footage roll again. This time in a room full of people. When Tessa's scream echoed from the speakers, Mrs. Jenkins let out a sob. Marjorie sprang to her feet. "This is slander. That video is taken out of context." "You chased a child with a drone," Lena interrupted. "That's not context. That's a crime." One by one, the neighbors stood. Mrs. Nguyen talked about the fines for her wreath, Mr. Jones about the lavender, Tom about the time his toddler was scolded for blowing bubbles too close to the HOA sign. Even Mr. Connor's voice shaking said, "She fined me for having dandelions when my wife was in the hospital." I'll never forget that. The vote was called. Hands rose like wheat in a summer breeze. Only 3 stayed down: Marjorie and her 2 clipboard cronies. It was over. Tom was nominated and confirmed as the new HOA president. His first motion, effective immediately: all residents are free to decorate, dance, and chalk on their own property within reason, and no drones shall be used for surveillance of any kind. Applause erupted. Marjorie stood clutching her clipboard like a deflated life vest. She tried to speak, but the words never came. Her heels clacked across the tile as she stormed out, leaving the clipboard behind on the table. Tessa picked it up, looked at it like it was cursed, and handed it to Tom. "You can recycle this," she said. That night, Rosefield Lane bloomed. Kids danced in yards under porch lights that flickered every color but HOA white. Sidewalks became murals. The Joneses planted 3 new lavender bushes. Someone even mowed a giant peace symbol into their lawn. And there, under the golden wash of a Carolina sunset, Tessa twirled barefoot in the grass, her sunflower dress spinning like a pinwheel, her giggles ringing louder than any drone. Lena and I sat on the porch, coffee cups in hand, watching her reclaim the space that was always hers. "You think it's really over?" she asked. I nodded. The clipboard's broken. The throne is gone. And the sky belongs to us again. She smiled. It took teamwork, timing, and 2 helicopters. I raised my mug. But we got our peace back. And somewhere in a wilted rose garden on the other side of the street, a shattered drone lay forgotten, just plastic and wire. Now no longer a threat, just a reminder. A reminder that even in the quietest neighborhoods, when you push good people too far, they push back with truth, unity, and sometimes with a little help from the U.S. Army. In neighborhoods across America where lawns are manicured and rules are posted on every bulletin board, it's easy to forget one important truth: community is not about control, it's about connection. The story of the Daltons and their battle against HOA President Marjorie Bellamy reminds us that when power becomes petty and rules are weaponized, it's our responsibility to speak up not just for ourselves, but for those who can't. Major Grant Dalton didn't fight back with anger or chaos. He fought with evidence, integrity, and precision. And Lena Dalton. She reminded us that quiet strength and sharp minds can cut through even the thickest red tape. Their daughter Tessa, an innocent child silenced by fear, became the heart of the movement, proof that joy, creativity, and childhood should never be policed. The real lesson here is this: tyranny doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears gardening gloves and carries a clipboard. But it can be defeated with unity, clear thinking, and a refusal to back down when something is clearly wrong. So here's our advice to anyone facing a Marjorie in their life, whether it's a neighbor, a boss, or a system that feels stacked against you. Document everything. Know your rights. Gather your people. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to speak the truth and let the facts do the heavy lifting. Because when one family stands firm, others will follow. And together you can move mountains, or at the very least fly a couple of helicopters over them to make your point. From all of us at Us Justice Stories, thank you for listening to this wild yet meaningful ride. Your support is what keeps stories like this alive. If this episode made you laugh, think, or even stirred a little righteous fire in your chest, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment, share your own neighbor story, or just tell us where you're tuning in from. We truly read them all. And if you haven't yet, please hit that like button and subscribe. There are plenty more justice stories coming your way, because in every corner of America, someone is standing up, and we're here to tell their story. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never let a drone tell your kid they can't dance.